Good morning, my name is Aubrey with J&M Pool Company. Thank you for watching. This is an educational video on how to measure for a liner on a rectilinear straight line pool. So the tools we're going to need for the job, we're going to need one level, 2 surveyor tapes, 1 steel tape measure, at least 25 feet long, 2 rebar for our pins, 1 drill, 1 hammer, and we're also going to need some screws to screw into the concrete. In order to properly measure for the pool liner, we operate under a triangulation system. So our initial step is to set up these 2 pins. Both pins are going to be opposite of our stairs, at least 5 feet from our liner and 20 feet apart. I'm going to set the initial stake here. Now I'm going to use the side of our poured deck as close as I can get to keep this steady. I'm going to throw my measuring tape on it. I'm going to go 20 feet. For consistency's sake, you're going to want to be exactly 20 feet every time, because how this triangulation system works, it works on having all of our numbers precise and accurate. So the next step in our liner measuring process is we're going to establish our next 4 points. Our initial 2 points were our pins A and B, always left to right. The next 2 points are going to be C and D. C and D are going to be about where our shallow end break line starts. So there's actually 2 lines. The line in which the Portland sand is going to break, and then the line to which we want to measure to. The reason we want to go past the actual line is to create some additional material so that our liner crew can set this liner in and not have wrinkles, and make it as easy as possible. So we want to go 12 inches past where our digging crew started this slope. That's going to be right about here. Now for our example, I'm going to put this tape on our poured concrete so I don't mess this up. I'll mark C on here. So following C, we're going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Once again, we have our actual line where our digging crew started the slope. We're going to go 12 inches past. Now we have already marked on our concrete. I'm going to mark on our decking using this tape so we don't mess this up. And that's C and D. So similarly, we're going to want to do E and F. F is going to be on this side. We're going to go 12 inches past where our deep end starts, which it looks like is about here. Now I'm going to go back to the other side and finish my E. And I'm going to double check myself and measure from the corner to my F and this corner to my E to make sure that they're exact. Uh, 106. Pull this back just a little bit to 106. Depending on where your curvature is in the pool, you may need to add a G-point. This G-point is going to be able to measure any of the curved surfaces, whether it be the staircase, our tanning ledge, or our swim out. Now, since none of these have any curves, we're just going to measure those with our steel tape. But for the purposes of this video, we're just going to explain how that works. We're going to measure down 11 inches. That is our first step. We go to 11 right here. Our next steps are 10 inches apiece. Step 2 and step 3. At these measurements, what we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole into the concrete, add the screws that we saw earlier, and that's how we're going to pull our measure. We're going to drill our hole. Oh, buddy. And we're going to leave our screw about a half an inch on the inside of the wall, and I'll explain that in just a minute. It would attach to the screw on our second hole, not our first hole. And since the screw was not drilled in all the way, we left it out about a half an inch. We do not need to reduce any measurement by a half an inch. So we will pull to the exact spot on that curvature. So our next step, what you're going to want to do is you're going to make a mark on each of the identities where they touch the wall. We're going to go 1/2 an inch inside the identity on the wall with our level. And what this is going to do is this is going to mark where each of these start. When they create the liner, they need to divide up all of the parts and pieces at the exact lengths so it fits properly. Once again, we're going to go 1/2 an inch inside the step. Make sure this is vertical and draw our line. And then just complete the process all the way around. So the steps, this is our first identity. The tanning ledge is our second. The third identity is over there at the corner, our swim out. So there's going to be one line over there to identify where that swim out touches the wall. The right side of that identity touches the wall at the corner, so we don't have to make a line. We will draw one over here at the tanning ledge to identify where the end of the ledge meets the wall. For the triangulation process, we're going to need 2 people. So this is Alden, he's going to help me out today. Alden is going to write down all of the measurements that we're going to pull from our tapes. This next step, we're going to measure from the shallow end to point C, and then from the shallow end to point D. Those 2 measurements should be exact. All right, we've got 188, and our next measurement from the shallow length to point D is also 188. We have 2 methods to record all of these measurements. One is a paper method, and the other we're transitioning to our iPad method. So this measurement, the 188, is going to go into one of those 2 places, and we'll look at those a little later. So our previous step, we measured our shallow end length. Now we're going to measure our ramp length. So Alden's going to help me out with this one again. We're going to go from points C to E, and we got 76. And then we're going to measure from point D to F, and those 2 should be the same again. And we got 76, so that's perfect. So this measurement, the ramp length, is also going to go in our documentation, either the paper form or on the iPad. So for our next step, we're going to measure from points C to D. So once again, there's two possible examples. One is with the coping and one is without. If we did not have a coping and we just had our track, we would measure from the track to the track, subtract a half an inch, and then that is our lateral measurement. Since we have a coping, we're going to measure from a 1/2 inch inside the coping that direction and a 1/2 inch inside the coping this direction, and that'll be our exact lateral measurement. I have 191 and 1/2 inch. So following our C to D measurement, we're also going to do E to F. We got 191 and a half. So for our next step, we're actually going to start measuring the pool. So we have 2 surveyor tapes. Now, one thing I do want to explain about these, you do not want to go through the top hole. You want to go through this bottom hole. That is going to be the accurate measurement for the liner. Also, you're going to have to check your individual tape. This is a Cobalt. The white side is the standard, the yellow side is not. So when you're pulling your tape, you want to know which side is going to be your standard measurement so that everything will be accurate. One other tip is you're going to want to pull out about 75 feet and leave the rest of the surveyor tape inside the pool. That's going to give you enough leeway and stretch and move so you're not tripping over yourself. All right. So we're going to go 75 feet. We're going to drop the rest of the surveyor tape inside the pool and begin our measurements. So a couple tips for consistency. Because you're going to be measuring more than one liner per day, you want to stay consistent so that if there's ever a mistake, you can go back and identify where it is you sort of messed up. So when we begin, we're going to want to start measuring from point C, and we're going to go clockwise around the pool. When you start with C, depending on the size of your pool and the type of your pool, that's going to dictate how far away each of the measurements are. When you're measuring curved surfaces, you're going to want to measure closer increments depending on the radius of the circle. When you're measuring straight line, it's okay to go about 2 to 3 feet per measurement. That's okay. So after our C point, once again, we're going to go clockwise. Since this is a straight line, we can go about 3 feet, and that'll be our second measurement. You're going to want to stay consistent. My right hand is on my A tape. My left hand is on my B tape. So when I'm reading these measurements, I'll get it consistent every time. So our second measurement is A, 23 feet, 8.5 inches. B, 24 feet, 9 inches. That is our second point. So just a friendly reminder, we're going to want to keep our tapes free from any obstruction. You always want to just double check that as you go. We went 3 feet increments up until our steps. So this is currently step 3. 3, 2, 1, and our corner. At every point that we made a line where the identity touches the wall, that'll be our steps, that'll be our tanning ledge, and that'll be our swim out, as well as the corners. We're going to want to make sure Alden knows that this point is step 3. So we'll draw our measurement, and then he'll identify that on his paper form. He'll either square it, circle it, mark it to the side. This is step 3. He'll also mark that on the iPad. For all 3 steps, corners, swim out, and our tanning ledge. And a 1/2 inch inside the coping. I have 22 feet, 1 inch for my A, and 30 feet, 3.5 inches for my B measurement. So for our next step, we're going to measure our deep end. So Alden's going to pull our surveyor tape nice and tight. We're still on our pin, our B pin. Come over with our steel tape. We're going to go all the way down where our dirt should be, minus the water. And I have 7 feet, 2 inches. I'm gonna subtract 3 inches for our sand buildup once our vinyl guys come in and build everything up. And I'm also gonna subtract 3 inches because for this example, we have a coping. If we did not have a coping and our surveyor tape was not resting on that coping, it would be 3 inches further down. Then we would only subtract 3 inches and not 6 inches. So 6 inches minus 7'2" is 6 foot 8 inches. So because we're dealing with mud, we're dealing with water, this is going to be a pretty close approximation. So not an exact science because we're also dealing with pulling tape tight and flipping a metal tape over. So we're just going to do our best, and our vinyl guys are going to accommodate for any errors that we have. So for our next step, what we're going to do is we're going to measure our x-axis of our deep end. So that's not the slope from the wall to the deep end, but it's the distance from the wall to where the slope ends. So there's basically 2 ways to do it, from the outside of the pool and from the inside. We're going to put our measuring tape from the corner, and we're just going to eyeball it here, and it's looking like I've got 27 inches. The way in which they install the liner, the way it flexes, the way it stretches, we're going to add 8 inches to that number so that the liner guys have a little bit easier job in building up the side walls. So I've got 27 inches plus our 8, we're looking at 35 inches. We're going to go inside the pool and verify that number. From the inside, we're going to want to do the exact same thing. We're going to put our tape to the side of the wall. We're going to be real technical here. We're just going to use a couple stones. And really, we're just going to estimate. We're going to drop our stones. I'm going to call that 31. 31 inches plus our 8 inches is 39 inches. One more thing to add is when you're measuring the x-axis of the deep end, you're going to want to take a look at all 3 sides, our left side, our right side, and our back side here, to see which is deeper, which one is going to be the longest length. I'm going to use that length. So for our next step, we're going to measure our straight line identities. So that's going to be the stairs, our tanning ledge, and our swim out in the corner. So as we're measuring our straight line identities, we're going to measure in 3 different areas, basically left, middle, and right. We will take our lowest measurement, and that's what we're going to write on our drawing. For this specific example, our first step runs directly into our tanning ledge. Sometimes it happens that way, sometimes it doesn't. For this, it does. We're going to measure these 2 things separately. So for the first step, as we did for the perimeter of the pool, we're going to subtract a little bit. In this case, we're going to subtract 1/2 inch off of the tread for step 1. Before we do that, let me get the measurement for our riser. That is 10.5 inches. Our tread is exactly 14 1/4. We're going to subtract that 1/2 inch. So tread number 1 is 13 3/4, only for our top step. Our next couple steps are going to be the exact measurement per step. So there's no need to measure our last step height, our number 3 step. What we are going to do is we're going to measure our wall length. Right now we're at 42 inches. We're going to subtract 2 inches for the floor buildup, which would make 40 inches. We take our 40-inch number, we subtract our first riser, our second, and our third. That remaining number is going to be the final riser. And then finally, for the measurement of just our step identity, we're going to measure the lengths. Our top step length from the wall to our tanning ledge is 96.5. However, once again, that's not our final number. We're going to come in 1/2 inch, which would make this 96 inches. We're going to do the same thing for all 3 steps. So our second identity is our tanning ledge. We're going to measure it in 3 different places. Here, in the middle, and where it touches the wall. Here in the middle, crossways, where it touches the wall. We're also going to measure our transverse length from corner to corner, and we're going to measure the height on this side because it happens to be just a little bit off. It's going to be a little different. So this is 96 inches. Just a reminder, we're going to pull a 1/2 inch off the wall, subtract a 1/2 inch, that would make it 95 and a 1/2 inch. Our middle length, that's the same there. We're going to do 95 and a half because we reduced it a 1/2 inch. And against the wall, we're dead on. We're going to do 95 and a half. Our builders did a great job on this one. So our last identity is our swim out. We're going to do the exact same thing. Measure in 3 places, left, middle, and right. We're going to take our lowest value, and that's going to be our true measurement. Thanks for watching. This has been our educational video on how to measure a straight line rectilinear pool.